In this video, we are going to learn how to query the user data and their role in a single query. So let's do that. First, I want to create a new project. We are going to do it in a new ASP.NET Core MVC project. So let me select this one. I will name it Users and Roles Tutorial. And then I will say next. I will select authentication type individual account so that we have an authentication system, a user system from the get-go. So let me go to the Solution Explorer. I want to go to Data because I want to open the application DB context, and in here I will paste a few classes. Normally I would put them in their own files, but in this case, because this is a tutorial, I don't want to waste any time creating files. So let me copy and paste this here. As you can see, we are creating a user class which will inherit from identity user, and in here what I'm doing is that I am modeling the many-to-many relationship that exists between user and role, and user role will be the model in the middle, the model in which we are going to save the information of the many-to-many relationship. So let me control dot here to bring this namespace of identity. Now I want to make these green squiggly lines disappear, so I can go to here and I can disable nullable so that we are disabling non-nullable reference types. So let's go back here and let's get to work. Now we have these classes here which again model the many-to-many relationship. Now I need to put these classes here. I need to say here user, role, a string, and so on. There are many others that I need to put, so just so you don't have to watch me typing all of that, I will paste this here. And by the way, all of this code will be in the description of this video in the GitHub repository, so you don't need to type all of this out. Now, after this step, we need to configure the many-to-many relationship here in the Fluent API. So we are here in the application DB context class. So I will say override on model creating, and do not delete this line that we have here. I repeat, do not delete it because otherwise this will not work. Now let me say here builder entity user, and I will configure the many-to-many relationship. I will say has many because a user has many user roles. So I will say user roles, and a user role have one user. So we're going to say user here. Let me put this in uppercase. Then we're going to say has foreign key. This is the most important part because I wanted to say that user ID is going to be the foreign key in this relationship, and I will say is required. Where does this user ID property comes from? It comes from identity user role, which is the class from which user role is inheriting. If I press F12 here, you are going to see that we have user ID here, which is this user ID that we're using. So let me put a semicolon here. Now I need to do the same, but from the point of view of the role, I need to say role has many roles with one role, has foreign key, role ID. But just so you don't have to see me typing that, here is the code. Now I need some data. We are actually finished. I can show you the query. Let me put the query here. Let me make the query here just so that you can see it. But we will do a test with data in a moment. Let me say application DB context control dot, just in case you only want to see the query. Let me say context control dot. I will assign it as a field, and here in the index I will say model equal to, and let me use the best practice of using asynchronous programming when we are doing an IO operation. So let me say task here. Now let me say await, and then I will say context users. I will say users. I will say include control dot to bring the entity framework core namespace, and then I will say include please the user roles, and then after that I want you to then include the information of the role. So I will say role here, then to list async, and then let me put this in several lines so that you can visualize everything better, let me put this here and this here. And that's actually it. This is the query which brings the data that we wanted. But let's make a test. But first I need some data. So let me come back here. I will use seeding. So I will create here a method that will populate our database with data, and I will paste our method here. This method, as you can see, is populating the user table with 3 users, an admin user, a sales user, and a user without a role. And then we're populating the roles table with 2 roles, admin and sales, and we're using hasData to insert that data in our database. And then we're creating the relationship between the admin user and the role, and the same for the sales role and the sales user. Now I need to invoke this seed method from here. So I will say seed builder semicolon here. And now I can say package manager console, I want to add a migration. So let me say data, enter. And as you can see, we have the data that will be populated in the tables of our database. So let me say update database, enter. And we are ready to make a test once this finishes. I will go to the index view. So that we can display the users with their respective roles here. So I will say model, and then I will say enumerable of user. I will say control dot here to bring this namespace, and then in here I will say for each var user in model. Then I actually need before this, I need to put a table here, class table, thead for the header, tr for a row, and th for the header. So user name here, and then role name, and then tbody below the thead, we're going to say tbody, and here we're going to put our for each. Now Ctrl KD to organize this, and then I will say tr td user name, and then we're going to work with a role. We need to keep in mind that a user could not have any roles, so we need to take that into account. So I will say user roles dot, we're going to say first or default, even though a user could have several roles, but we're going to pretend that they just can have one. So let me say here this role and name, and that's actually it. I can press Ctrl F5 to run my application in debugging mode, and it seems like we forgot to pass the model into the view. So let me say model here, Ctrl F5 one more time, and here as you can see we have admin user, admin, sales user, sales, and user without role, no role. So as you can see, it is really easy once we make this configuration that we did. Once we did this configuration that we did here and here, it is really easy to bring the data of the user and their roles. Thank you.